Hello, everybody. My name is Al Parsai. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and I have been practicing as an immigration consultant for the past 12 and a half years. I'm also an adjunct professor at Queen's University. And today I would like to talk about category based express entry rounds of invitation in Canada based on the new development in the immigration system. Please do not forget to like and follow. Let's begin without further ado. So let's first discuss express entry. Express entry is a system that is developed for immigration to Canada. This is not an immigration option to Canada. It's an online system that allows you to submit your application to become a permanent resident under one of these three categories: Federal Skills Worker Program or FSWP, Canadian Experience Class or CEC, and Federal Skilled Trades Class or Trades Program FST. If you qualify for any of these applications, then you may enter the pool of express entry and compete with the rest of the candidates for express entry, and eventually the government may send you an ITA or invitation to apply. That's when you submit your documents, and eventually, if gets approved, you become a permanent resident in Canada. The government of Canada recently made changes in terms of how they select people from the pool of express entry. Because in the past, the selection from the pool of express entry was based on CRS score or comprehensive ranking system score. And if you scored higher, then you had the chance to be selected comparing to the rest of the population. However, they recently made significant changes in the way that they invite people from the pool of express entry, and I'm going to explain it today. First, let's take a look at those three programs. Remember, the first program under Express Entry system is called Federal Skilled Worker Program. This is probably a traditional immigration option to Canada. It covers people who may have Canadian Experience Class, or they may not have Canadian Experience Class. So in other words, you may be an educated person from outside Canada who also has enough work experience and knowledge of one of the official languages of Canada and apply under the Federal Skilled Worker Program. However, you need to know that this program has some requirements. First of all, it has some minimum or basic requirements. Without those requirements, you cannot apply at all. For example, you need to have at least 1 year of qualifying work experience. That means 1 year of continuous full-time or full-time equivalent work experience under a NOC tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 job. And I don't want to go into the details of NOC or National Occupational Classifications, but certain jobs qualify for Federal Skilled Worker Program. They're usually jobs that they need education at a post-secondary level. And then on top of that, you need to take an official test. For English, you need to take either IELTS General or CELPIP-G, and for French, TEF Canada or TCF Canada. And then you need to score at least equivalent of CLB 7 or Canada Language Benchmark 7 under each of the language skills, and then that's when you can apply. You also need to have your education credentials outside Canada being evaluated by an ECA certified or educational credential assessment organization. This program also has a point system, which consists of a maximum of 100 points. You need to gain at least 67 points out of those 100 points. Those points are based on your work experience, your adaptability, your age, your language skills, etc. If you have a job offer, for example, in Canada or not. And I don't want to go into the details of those, but if you visit settler.ca, I have published articles about the point system under federal skilled worker class, and we even have an FSW calculator that you can use to calculate your points. If you do not meet the requirements of FSW, then you cannot enter the pool of express entry unless you have the requirements of CEC or FST. If you don't have the requirements of any of those options, do not try to enter the pool of express entry, because the system will just kick you out of the pool almost immediately. The Canadian Experience class is different. It doesn't have a point system, but you need to show that you have at least 1 year of work experience in the past 3 years in Canada. Your work experience can be part-time, full-time, but if you accumulate the hours of your work, it needs to be equivalent to 1 year of full-time experience in Canada, and it needs to be under NOC 0, 1, 2, or 3. Your language requirements depends on the NOC of the job that you have worked in Canada. For NOC 0 and 1, you need to show at least CLB 7, and for NOC 2 and 3, at least CLB 5. However, remember, these are the minimums, because we are competing with the rest of the population that are in the pool of express entry, and obviously the higher your education levels, the better. For the Federal Skilled Trades Program, again, there is no point system. However, you need to show work experience in the past 5 years, 2 years of work experience under qualifying NOC codes, and those NOC codes, they all fall under trades jobs like being a welder, plumber, etc. And then you also need to meet the language requirements, which is a minimum of CLB 5 for speaking and listening, and a minimum of CLB 4 for writing and reading. And you either need to have a job offer in Canada, a valid job offer, or a certification of qualifications from a province. Again, I have an article about this with all the explanations that you need to know. When you enter the pool of express entry, the government will calculate certain points for you, and those points could amount to a maximum of 1,200 points, and they are divided into 4 major categories or group of factors. The first one is core or human capital factors, which focus on your age, your education, your work experience, your language abilities. And then if you have a spouse or common law partner, you also could receive some points because of them, or lack of points because of them. And then skill transferability factors, which combines your core or human factors with certain other factors, and you could receive up to 100 points under that group. And then you also have additional points. For example, if you have a brother or sister who is a permanent resident or Canadian citizen in Canada, you could receive 15 points. If you know French language, you could receive up to 50 extra points on top of whatever points you originally received because of your test results. And then you also, if you have a post-secondary education in Canada, you could receive 30 points. If you have arranged employment, you could receive up to 200 points. And if you have provincial nomination, you could receive up to 600 points. Remember that additional points are maximum of 600 points. They cannot go beyond 600 points. Now, in terms of provincial nomination, it's not a different category under express entry, but it is an opportunity to be invited under Canadian experience, under express entry system. So PNP stands for Provincial Nomination or Nominee Program, and if it could, as I mentioned, you could receive up to 600 points. Now, sometimes a province directly selects you, or they have a system that you show your interest in the province and they select you and you receive that 600 points. Sometimes you receive an NOI or Notice of Interest from a province. And then when you receive a Notice of Interest from a province, you need to do sometimes certain things to receive that 600 points. For example, enter their expression of interest system, and then if they send you an official invitation, then that's when you receive 600 points. And eventually, because you have higher CRS score, then you will be able to get invited and then eventually immigrate to Canada under one of the immigration options that they have. Now, the new category based selection has changed things significantly because in the past, the selection was based on CRS score. We had certain situations that the government limited the invitation to one of the four groups that we mentioned: federal skilled worker class, people with Canadian experience class, and people with federal skilled trades, or people who had invitations from a province. They could just limit invitations to one of these four groups. Having said that, nowadays we have also a category based system which could defy the CRS score. So, how does category based selection work? First of all, IRCC discusses this with their partners and labor market projections, etc. And eventually they come up with categories each year. And the government needs to report those categories to Parliament every year, and then based on, of course, the input that they receive from different sources and their, of course, their own decision, eventually they will decide on the categories that they want to use for each year. So in 2023, we have certain categories that we will discuss, but these categories could change. Now, in 2023, these are the categories that we have. One of them is a French language proficiency. So if you show that you are proficient in French language, then you could be selected or you could fall under this category. But the rest of them are job-based. So we have healthcare occupations, STEM, which stands for science, technology, education, math occupations, trade occupations, transport occupations, and agriculture and agri-food occupations. Now, not every job under these categories are acceptable. In fact, IRCC has posted a list of acceptable NOC codes, and if you go on my article on settler.ca, you will see the list of those NOC codes on our website as well. Now, how the selection process works: the government of Canada, when they do run a round of invitation for express entry, they could do it now in three different ways. Number one is general rounds of invitation. So it means, for example, right now we have over 220,000 people in the pool of express entry. So they could invite, say, 3,000, 4,000 people from that pool, and if they use the general rounds of invitation, the only reason that they invite you is that your CRS score is among the top, for example, 3,000 or 4,000 people. And based on that, they will invite you, and you, after receiving the ITA, you can submit your application, and if you get approved, you become permanent resident. Sometimes they may round program specific rounds of invitations. As I mentioned, they might say that in this round, we only invite Canadian experience class, or in this round, we only invite PNP people who received invitations from PNP. But they also sometimes run rounds of invitation based on those categories that we mentioned. Now, if they do that, then depending on the category that you are in, now you compete with less number of people. I give you an example. So let's say they want to invite people that they fall under French language category, and we have 3,000 people that they qualify under French language category, and they want to invite 1,000 people from that category. So you only compete with the other 3,000 people if you're among the 1,000 top CRS score people of that category. You will be selected. So you're not worried about the other 200 plus thousand people who are in the pool of express entry. Now, if they collectively focus on categories, because they haven't run any category based invitations yet, but eventually if they do, we will realize if they want to do collectively for all those categories or just one of those categories. But even if you do collective, again, you are competing with all the people who fall under those 6 categories rather than everybody in the pool of express entry. That's a plus for those people who qualify under one of those categories. Now, if you want more information, you can visit settler.ca. You can book a consultation session with me. My consultation sessions are not free, but if you book a consultation session and eventually decide to hire me and my team, in that situation, we will deduct the amount that you paid for consultation from the service agreement fee. You could also fill out our assessment form by visiting settler.ca/AF. AF stands for assessment form. If you fill out the form, we only contact you if we review your form and we guess that it's likely there is an option for you to immigrate to Canada. My services are not limited just to immigration or express entry. We offer services in terms of temporary residence in Canada, work permits, study permits, visitor records, dealing with immigration issues like removal orders or even IRB hearings, etc. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please like this video, share it with your friends, like subscribe to our channel, and of course enable notifications. See you soon.